A brand new week, another episode. It is the dawning experience with Chami Moroke. Coming from an abusive marriage and becoming an inspiring motivational speaker and also a woman empowerment ambassador. Today on the Woman Empower edition, we are joined by Carroline, who takes us on her journey. Now, let me take this moment to welcome you, Carroline, on the dawning experience.
Thank you so much, Chami, for having me.
I've been waiting, I've been hearing a lot about you and being curious who is Caroline, because on this show I love to get to know the person before we get into the conversation. So can you tell us who is Caroline?
Yes, absolutely. So Caroline is known as Influential Woman, and my journey started in 2020 when Influential Woman was born. That is when I spoke out for the first time on a platform called We Lift to Rise, and it's Arizona platform. So it's been a very tough journey. 13 years of abuse. It started when I was 15, and I guess the life lessons that I had to endure and the curveballs is what brought me to this point where I said enough is enough, and I'm gonna speak out. I'm gonna give women the inspiration that they need to say, like, if she can do it, then so can we. So that's
Exactly.
how Influential Woman was born.
Of course. Now let me just take it back, from the young Caroline. Were you raised by both your parents?
So I grew up in a broken home. So my mom left when I was 11, and my dad raised me. So the question you asked was, were both parents present? No, they weren't.
You were basically raised by your dad.
Yes.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
So now here's a 15-year-old Caroline. There's something that happened there that you had to do an abortion.
Yes, yes. So my dad passed away when I was 14 years old. And when he passed away, I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't bear the pain of him not being around because he was my everything.
Yeah.
So I started spiraling out of control, drinking, smoking, clubbing, trying to explore down the wrong paths, the wrong avenue, to deal with that pain, to try and fill the void.
Yeah.
And I even took an overdose, I tried to commit suicide because, like, I didn't see a reason for me to go on without him.
It was just a lot.
Yeah, it was too much. And my mom, she was an alcoholic, and she, she couldn't raise me. So I was at a club, and that's when I met my abuser. That is when my journey of hell began. So it was about a few months later that I fell pregnant, and obviously, because I was so young, he didn't want to have a child. And at that point, I really didn't think he was looking for commitment because he was 8 years older than me. So I had to have an abortion, and it was, well, initiated by him. So in other words, I
basically it
didn't
was a
have.
forced.
Yeah, it was forced. Because when he brought it up to me, and I said, no, we can't do that, he slapped me. And that came as a surprise because, like, I'm here thinking, okay, I found a guy, he's
Who loves you?
yeah, he's good looking, and he's gonna be with me through it all. But that was, the first warning sign of an abusive monster. Yeah.
So now from the forced abortion, what happened then?
Okay, so I'm gonna go into a little bit detail of the abortion. So he was off his dad's medical aid, and he took me in to the doctor under his brother's medical aid.
What?
As in, like, the brother now is the father of my child. And I just get called, like, okay, meet me at the doctor. And I get there, and I don't know what was discussed prior. And the doctor prescribed the pills. And, like, the whole time going back home, he was trying to, like, persuade me and convince me to do this. And I still didn't want to do it. So he did it. You have to insert the pills, and it's not taken orally.
Yeah.
And then the doctor gave him the instructions and whatnot. So a few hours later, I just feel like really strong cramps. And it was just an overflow of what would normally be your menstrual cycle.
Yes.
And then at 3 in the morning, I go to the bathroom, and I'm like trembling, and there's just like this overflow of your menstrual cycle. And my mom described the incident of, because I kept on showering and like changing my clothing.
Yeah.
She described the incident of finding you know what you would find in a chicken, like a food bag,
Yes.
in one of my pants. And then she knew like what was going on, because obviously I didn't tell her anything about it, because I mean I was 15, and um, I didn't want anyone else to know about it until I knew like what was
What is
happening.
happening? Yes.
So yeah, that's basically the incident. And I called him up at 3 in the morning, and then he's like, "So what do you want me to do?" And yeah, that's when I ended things the first time. But shortly after that, he came back. So
Did you go back to him? Did you just accept him, or
um, the thing is, he was very persuasive because he was way older than me, and he knew what to say. So when we split, I started going back to my friends whom he didn't approve of, and I was just like partying and drinking, back on that path of destruction. But I think he didn't like that, or maybe he thought I would move on, or I don't know what was going through his mind at that time. But then, yeah, we got back together, and from there things just started going downhill.
oh my? Now I understand that you also became a mother at the age of 17, and you were also in a shelter. Please take me through that.
Okay, so when my dad passed away, the house was then manned by the executive of the estate, who was the attorney. There were tenants on the property, and rentals were being collected. However, it was not paid, or it was not distributed according to the will. Then the attorney sold the property, and we had nowhere to go. Um, so I fell pregnant. I think it was maybe a few months or a year after the abortion.
Yep, okay.
And that time around, I was like, no ways. I am not going to do
No
it.
abortion,
I am
yeah.
standing my ground, because I knew what I went through the first time around, and it's a sin. The fact
It
that
is.
you taking a life, like, he didn't have a conscience. And so
But what
then
did it do to you mentally? Now that you mention it, that it being a sin, what
it
did it do to you?
for years, it ate me up like a cancer from the inside. And I couldn't forgive myself, and I always wondered, like, how would the child look? Was it a girl or a boy?
Oh,
And I was listening to a church sermon the one day, and God said, "I forgave you. You need to forgive yourself."
powerful.
And I just cried, because that's always something that's in the back of my mind. And I always wonder, like, is my firstborn that child? Or you don't know how the realms of the spirit work. So it's always something that's in my mind.
So amazing. Now this is you becoming a mother. How was that experience? Because you decided now, no abortion, I'm going to keep this baby.
Okay, so we had nowhere to go, because his parents kicked him out. They didn't approve of our relationship, or that's what he told me. I don't know whether that's true or not. Yeah.
Of course.
And my mom, she then had a boyfriend, who she was living with. So I went to her, but with the alcohol and me being pregnant, it was just too much. So I ended up going to a friend's place, someone that I schooled with, and he went to one of his relatives' place. Um, and then it was just a very sad situation, because my friend and I'm age, 16 years old, and obviously her mom didn't approve of me living there at the time, being pregnant. So yeah, from there on out, I went to another relative. She could only keep me for a few days, and then I ended up going to my mom's friend, who was a teacher. And she said she can help me out for a little while, and eventually, I had to find my own way, and I ended up in a women's shelter for single moms.
So where is the guy now? Because I mean, you're a mother. You're supposed to be with your partner.
So, fast track a bit, you can only live in that women's shelter for the duration of your pregnancy. Then, when the baby was born, the nuns, it was a Catholic women's shelter, and it was a very nice women's shelter. We used to get sponsored by Woolies, and you had to do your chores, there was a roster and stuff. It wasn't what you would normally think a shelter is. And he came and got us. The baby was 3 days old. We ended up going to live with his parents, because his boss called the parents to say he's working double shifts and what's going on, or so he told me. And yeah, when we got there, his dad obviously didn't approve of it because I'm so young.
Yeah.
And he said he's only giving us a little bit of time to figure our lives out. But we ended up staying there for 2 years because they grew on the child, that bond.
Yes.
So then the abuse got so bad, he would just like come home drunk, go on a Friday night, come back on a Sunday, just walk in and start beating me up. Obviously, his parents didn't condone his behavior.
Yeah.
And I just walked out and I left to my sister's place. And shortly after that, the same weekend, he found a place and we moved out on our own. But that was the start of something even worse. The abuse never stopped. He would always accuse me with guys. He would accuse me with my boss. And in the time that we moved out on our own, I think it was about 2.5 years later that I fell pregnant with my second child, whom I didn't even want because already I'm going through so much.
A lot. Yeah.
And he wasn't a good example as a father because he was living life as though he was a bachelor and I was just a trophy. Whenever he needs to bring me and the child out to his family or friends, then we must just come out. Other than that, we must not be seen or heard.
And you're not supposed to be around men, according to him.
According to him, yeah. It was just, it was a very traumatic experience because, I am, so in love with this man because, he was my first boyfriend and, he was good looking at the time. He had that, charm and whatnot. But little did I know, that was the devil himself.
Carroline, there's something that you wrote on your bio. It reads as follows: from my head being bust, my wrist being slit, and me being bitten with a cord.
All of those things did happen. It happened at a later stage as we lived together, like for many years, where he got to a point where his crazy was just getting worse as the years went by. The accusations started growing stronger. And now that I look back, everything he was accusing me of was projection. It was everything that he was doing and coming and accusing me. He used to stalk me. He used to track me. And I had no idea until I left.
Yeah.
He did beat me with a cord. It was my straightener, my hair straightener that he broke on me. And then when he couldn't hit me anymore with the straightener, he started using the cord. I remember that was one of the worst beatings because around that time, he told me to get into the freezer. And after he beat me with the cord, I remember I was like bedridden because I was hurt so badly, and then my jaws were even so like I couldn't really talk. And then he comes and takes care of me. Like that was just so sick.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, because the neighbor invited us over, and we didn't go. So the neighbor was upset, like, why am I not coming? It's literally across the hall. And she came and she found me like bedridden, and then she started crying because she had no idea.
Man. Yeah.
So that same day he carried me, he filled the bathtub, he put me in the bath, he brushed my teeth, and he like carried me back to bed and covered me. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, this is just the most psychotic thing I've ever.
I bet there was that.
Yeah.
No, the petting, I love you.
Like he didn't just do this to me. So at that moment, I was like, no, I need to get out because around that time, the abuse started getting so bad where we lived on the second floor and he like threw me against the window and the window broke and like I almost fell through. He would just make accusations and he was so convinced like I'm having an affair, accused me with his family members. And then I was still trying to find a job because, we were on and off jobs because we moved from Durban up to Johannesburg. And then we both lost our jobs at the same time here in Johannesburg because we went to Durban for a wedding and we went for the long weekend, but we didn't return the Monday as we supposed to. So I was looking for jobs online. I was using my neighbor's tablet because all the devices in my home he would break.
Oh.
And he just entered like the hallway outside and he saw me on the tablet and automatically assumes that I'm chatting to a guy. And I'm like, but I'm looking for jobs. And why would I be standing outside if I want to be discreet about what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And then he went into our flat, so I followed him. Then he just took this metal spoon, like I think it was a spatula,
Yeah.
and he just came at me, and I like blocked my face. And when I did that, I didn't even know that my hand was bleeding, and I lost feeling. And the next thing I see like blood everywhere, and I'm thinking like, okay, but where is it coming from? And then I see that my wrist is like slit. You can see the cartilage, and the funny story is on the same day he just barged out. After that,
Yeah.
I cooked before I left. I had to leave my kids with the neighbor. Um, and our bishop, we were on a fast, and he sent the pastor over because he was getting like visions, and he could see like, no, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And he kept on telling the pastor, just go to Carroline. And when the pastor came and found me in that condition, he's like, Bishop has been telling me the whole time, go to Carroline, go to Carroline. And he ended up taking me to the hospital, and the church was raising funds, and Bishop was so kind to say he'll pay for everything. And I'm like, no, it's fine, I'll go to a government hospital. And I sat there until like midnight before they could attend to me and give me stitches and give me a tetanus injection. And then we went back home quite late. And when I get home, the audacity of this monster, he's like, oh, I didn't eat.
Wow.
And I'm like thinking to myself, you just like almost chopped my hand off.
Yeah.
I still cooked for you. The least you could have done was dish up your own food.
Exactly.
And he was even angry at the fact that I went and got my hand treated.
Oh.
It's so unbelievable when I think back on everything that I had to endure.
That's quite a lot. As you're talking, I'm thinking of the kids, what it did to them. Yes, at times when it happened, you would just take them to the neighbor, but how did it affect them?
So my oldest daughter, it really affected her a lot, and it's starting to show now because she's a teenager. My son, he did see a bit of it, but I feel like he mimics the behavior of what he saw. And there was a time when he stood up to his father. He was 3 years old, and he told his father, stop hitting my mom. And his father gave him a slap across his face. So my oldest daughter used to just take him to their room and like close the door whenever he was abusive towards me. And I think that was the best thing, because for them to be safe and not get caught in the crossfire. But they've really been through a lot as children, because they didn't have any peace. They always had to have this fear. When is the next beating, or
Of course.
when is mommy not going to be able to get out of bed and make breakfast or take care of us. So my daughter had to quickly learn to be the mother at a very young age, to take care of my son and try and assist.
Now, Carroline, when did you decide that enough was enough?
I left so many times. I've lost count in the years of being in the abusive marriage, how many times I left. So I left in 2015, and then he made a plan to say like he's going to back to Durban, and I must go back to the flat with the 2 kids. So I went back. On the Sunday. Lo and behold, at 3 a.m, the man is back at the door knocking. So that's how he came back into my life in 2015. We ended up moving house again, and I ended up falling pregnant with the 3rd child.
Okay.
And to be honest, the 2nd and 3rd child was never part of my plan. I was actually trying to get out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, have an abortion, because that's how bad the abuse was. But I was convicted, spiritually, because being a woman of God, being married, you can't do that. So
and from the lessons of the first abortion.
Yes, it was overwhelming. So the baby was born. He would have his moments where he was not as abusive. Just to give me a bit of a breather, if I can say.
Wow.
But the baby wasn't allowed to cry. The baby, he would never help me at night, but sometimes he would work night shift, so he would leave at 5 a.m. So it was a very weird thing, because a baby's supposed to cry.
Of course.
But God is so good that this child, she never used to cry. She used to pant, like when she wakes up.
Wow.
She would pant, and then I would just get her And she was such, she's still such an angel.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, I'm like, no, the other two are traumatized.
Of
And
course.
she's such a sweet little girl. She doesn't need to go through what they went through. And when will I when will I take a stand? When will I leave?
Exactly.
So I went and I decided, you know what, 3 children are too much. I want to get sterilized. And he knew about it, but then the night before me going into theater, he gave me such a beating, telling me that, oh, he's my husband, and um, why would I decide on my own? And I'm like, but it's my body,
Your
and I
body.
told you
Yeah.
about it prior. Um, so he took me to theater at 5 the next morning, and I'm sure the surgeon saw all the blue marks
Of
and whatever.
course.
And the next day, I came out of surgery, and he's taking me like shopping and dragging me around. And I just came out of surgery, and I was in so much of pain. But yeah, I mean, it's those traumatic experiences that just made me resent him so much.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2019, our company merged with the South African Civil Aviation Authorities, and there was a benchmarking experience, and that actually saved my life because so I got paid on the 25th as per normal, and he was in charge of my finances. I was not at liberty to do anything. Um, he would take my bank card.
Everything.
He would take us shopping. He would drop me off at work. He wouldn't even go to the shop just to get a loaf of bread, the bread run. He would take me. He would wait for me and take me with him. And we got paid on the 25th, and I made sure that he sees, like, now I'm out of money.
Yeah.
And a few days later, we got paid this benchmarking money. And, it was in that moment I was at a crossroad. I'm like, it's now or never. So I was looking for places online. I did viewings online, and eventually I had to go in and pay for the key
Yeah.
and get my key. And, um, you know, I had such good colleagues that, stood by me and helped me throughout the process. Um, I went, paid for the key, and he knew I was at work. So the Friday, um, I went home, started packing on the day. Had to get a guy to come and help me
Help
move.
you. Yes.
Still go back to the office because he was constantly calling me, and it's not like me to not answer.
Mm-hmm.
And when he phoned the office, they said I'm in a meeting. And then when I eventually called him back, he just started swearing at me. And then my
Oh.
colleague next to me like jumped up from my seat because we still had to get the kids. And then the kids and the
Yes.
nanny like rushed and left. It was literally like one of those movies, straight out of a movie scene. Because he was on his way from work. And thank God he didn't go home to our flat. He went straight to my sister's place because my sister's boyfriend and him are good
close,
friends.
okay.
Yeah. And it was in that time that I was doing all of this. And God really kept me
Wow.
because had he come home that day, I was going to be murdered.
What would have happened?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that anger, he was going to see like now she's leaving and where is she going? And he went to security, got CCTV footage, and my kid and the nanny left with a neighbor, this guy. And then he started making up rumors like, oh, I'm having an affair
Who
with
is
a
that
guy.
Yeah.
And I moved in with this guy. And where I moved, it's a very secure complex. It's a gated complex, and it's an access. You can't get in and out without an access card. So I was happy and I felt safe because there was no way that he could now come in. And even if he did, there's so many villages, he wasn't gonna find me. Or so I thought. And so on the day when I was like leaving, my son was still at school. So I went back to the office, and now I'm panicking because now by then he would have been home, and how will I get my son? So as I was going down the road, one of my colleagues took me to my son's school. I see he was in the car park, and I was so scared. Like, what if I get to school and my son's not there? So I got my son, and then I was so happy. I exhaled, like finally, this is a new chapter, and we're gonna be free. But he kept on like trying to message me and stuff, and he sent me locations because the next day I went. When I left, I took nothing, just our clothes.
Yeah.
I had nothing, not even a spoon, not even a pillow, nothing. So the next day I had to go and like furnish the house and everything. So I went to a few places, And that same afternoon, he started messaging me and just started sending me locations. And I asked him, I'm like, why are you
Oh,
sending me
yeah.
locations? Like, what's going on? And like, why are you even messaging me? Then he's like, come out. And I'm like, come out where? And then my heart started like
Beating
beating
fast. Oh.
because I'm like, does he know where we are? And then when I looked at the locations, it was everywhere I went on the day. And
Remember, you did say that he was tracking you, following you around.
yes, and I had no idea. And thank God, I wasn't a person with double standards. I never cheated on him. He just
Yeah.
projected that onto me. Because can you imagine if I was that person, him tracking me, and I had no
Yeah.
idea. So it was in that moment that I realized he's tracking me. Months later, I found out that he was stalking me with my family members, sitting with him in the corner. And, it's a 7 village complex. There's hundreds of units, but he knew exactly which unit I was in, and he would sit and park and watch. And that is so crazy. Like, it was so
cringe.
sick
Oh.
because you hear about these things, you watch movies, you read about it, but when it actually happens to you, you wonder the extent of this person's crazy. Like, what else were they doing when you were with them, and why are they doing these things? Like, that's just it was very scary because I always felt like he was watching me, because I had this fear in me, because of the abuse. And the one time he just showed up at work accusing me of going to lunch with a guy in a white van. And whole time I was sitting at work. And sometimes he would just show up at the office and bring me lunch because he used to work across the lake from where I worked. And it was just crazy because he always wanted to know what was going on.
Yeah.
And he would drop me off at the office. And when I'm inside the office, you literally just drop me off. I must phone you from the office phone so you can see that I'm in the office. So yeah, it was those things that I had to go through in the 13 years. I never had any freedom, and I always said that I felt even prisoners had more freedom than I did.
Than you did.
Yeah,
Because
so
that was quite a lot.
it was a lot. He was very narcissistic, so we literally had to walk around eggshells. If he goes to bed at 7, we must go to bed. We weren't allowed to watch what we wanted to watch. We weren't allowed to listen to music. We had to always listen to his choice of music and everything. Like, we just robots to him. You can't even breathe a certain way or sneeze. And I remember this one time I was really sick with flu, and he just started beating me up, because I was opening the whole wrapper, and he was annoyed at that sound. And I'm thinking, like, can it get any worse than this? Like, I'm sick. I'm trying to open a sweet to soothe my throat, and then this man is beating me up. Just
Caroline, right now I'm thinking of, what lessons can we give to ladies? There are a lot of women who are coming from your experience and they keep going back into the same thing. What can we do? Because you can come to me and say, friend, this is what's going on, but yet you still go back. What can we do when it comes to that?
So the thing about going back, and I only recently learned this, it's a trauma bond. So from the psychological aspect, it's a trauma bond because you're so used to this person, and they've changed your thought process, with dopamine and serotonin and all these neurotransmitters of how you're supposed to feel, and they literally reprogram you into thinking like this is how life is supposed to be. Um, and sometimes you go back for security, like because you can't stand on your own 2 feet for your kids. So it's survival. Sometimes you go back for complacency because you have everything. You have the nice home, you have the life. But now to start all over again, it doesn't come with a silver spoon. You have to start from the bottom and build your way up. So there's a lot of reasons why women go back, but I would say the number one reason is the trauma bond. And from the spiritual aspect, it's a soul tie that you need to break, you need to pray, because the spiritual realm controls the physical realm. And there's certain things that we don't see with the naked eye, but when you get married, you're making a covenant before God. And when the Bible says that husbands leave your wives and become one, when you become one, it's the act, the intimate act,
Of course.
and that makes you one. So that
And
act,
covenant.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the covenant, and that covenant needs to be broken. So I would say it's a soul tie, and it's a spiritual thing that keeps pulling you back. And if you don't know about spiritual things, and if you're not covered in the spiritual realm, then this thing has a stronghold. It's a stronghold that keeps pulling you back. So that is my personal opinion of why people go back.
So what about also the mental part? Because you'll find the lady saying, "Oh no, it's me. I keep pushing him." Always blaming themselves. What is it doing to them mentally?
So back to the part of them rewiring your thought process, because remember, you're under mind control. But the minute you take back your power and have your emotional intelligence in place, you're able to step out of your situation and see it from a third party's perspective. Yes, and you blame yourself because they constantly blame you for everything. Even if something happens in another city, it's your fault because they're narcissistic men. So women do tend to take on that role to say, like, maybe it's me, maybe, I'm the problem, maybe if I treat him
Yes.
better. But you can't give him more of what he doesn't already appreciate. You cannot overextend yourself more than you've already, because no matter what you do, you are not good enough in his eyes, because that's how he sees himself. And what these narcissistic men do is they literally mirror you. So in the beginning of the relationship, everything is great because they love bombing you. You're on this pedestal. They're treating you well, but it's a toxic cycle. It's a cycle of love bombing, gaslighting, manipulation, devaluation, and then eventually they discard you. So they would either discard you emotionally, or they discard you by going to other partners, and you only find out after the fact. And then they hoover you back in with that love bombing, because it's like a drug addict. You get addicted to this toxic cycle, and you want that next hit. You want to
Keep
feel that
going
love
back.
again, and you'll do anything just to get a little bit of affection from this person. And it's just not there. What you're looking for is not there. The person you fell in love with doesn't exist. They were mirroring your emotions, your empathy. And then eventually they take everything from you and they leave you empty. You're an empty shell. So now what you're seeing is them mirroring that brokenness back to you, because they broken. They broken, so they need to take and take and take from you to fill that void and fill themselves. So it's been a very a tough mental psychological healing journey, but it takes years, and you eventually feel like you have a PhD in this thing because of everything you've
Of
experienced.
course.
So yeah, psychologically, it really takes a toll on you. Sometimes victims zone out, and I do that. I still do that. I zone out. If I feel like I'm being triggered, I would just zone out. If there's a song that takes me
you
back to
back.
the trauma, I just zone out. And no matter how much of healing you do, I always say that healing is a journey. There is no
It
final
is.
destination. You can be good for 20 years, and then on one fateful day,
moment.
everything just comes back. It's so overwhelming. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Wow. Caroline, just to close it, and there's quite a lot of women going through this. I just want you to just advise, some of these women who are going through this, not knowing what to do. What is it that you can say to them?
Okay, so the first step would be to make the decision consciously, not from other people telling you, you deserve better or you need to leave. Because a lot of the time, women stay and they say it's for the sake of the children. So you need to stop making excuses for his behavior, and you need to see your worth. And that is the first step, when you would consciously decide, what, I'm leaving. And there's so many things that women can do. They can actually reach out to either their pastors, they can reach out to therapists, they can, get a solid foundation of strong woman and a support system. So when you do leave, you won't go back in fear of being alone, because you have your support system, and if you need to talk, you need to cry, you can reach out to your support system.
Yes.
So the thing I would advise women is to get a support system and plan, how are you gonna leave. Are you just gonna pack a bag in the middle of the night and leave to a shelter? Are you gonna try and find a job, and in the time, look for a place, or however you're going to execute your plan, you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan of when you leave, your safety, because leaving is just a very small part of it. Staying gone is the hard part.
Yeah.
And when you leave, you need to be sure that you're going to be safe, and you're not going to end up
Yeah.
as a statistic of women being murdered, or GBV
That's
statistic
true.
murders. You need to find a way to stay safe, unseen, find that safe place
Yes.
of, I'm no longer a victim, I'm a survivor, and that is when you can like feel that strength and you can leave.
Oh, Caroline, thank you so much for that inspiring message, because I know this is going to teach someone at home, who's going through a lot. I really, really appreciate you for taking time and joining us on the Dorney Experience.
Thank you so much, Tommy, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. It was my honor to be here with such an inspirational woman, and I really love what you're doing here.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, indeed. It is the dawning experience. I do hope that you have learned something from this interesting conversation, that you as a woman, you have a voice. Do not just keep quiet and just suffer in pain. So if you have something to say, comment, just go on YouTube and just comment, like, and share, because we are here for you. It is the dawning experience. On today's episode of the Dawning Experience, we just highlighted an interesting journey of Caroline, who was telling us about her abusive relationship. And I do hope that you, as women who are going through the most, will take lessons and just say, you know what, enough is enough, like she did. This is the Dawning Experience. Do comment, like, and share.